Welcome to The Explainer, everyone. Today we are unpacking something that is honestly truly chilling. When we think of horror, our minds usually drift straight toward the supernatural, right? Ghosts, monsters, things that go bump in the night. But the source material we're digging into today proves that the absolute most terrifying threats out there don't come from the paranormal at all. They come from the unpredictable, deeply unsettling, and sometimes downright sinister nature of everyday human beings. We're going to walk through 4 incredibly bizarre real-life case files that are absolutely going to make you rethink your surroundings. So I want you to think about this for a second. What is the absolute scariest thing you could ever invite into your home? True horror often begins in our most vulnerable, everyday spaces. We're talking about the places where we sleep, the spaces we retreat to just to feel safe. As you'll see from the data we're looking at today, sometimes the nightmare isn't some shadowy figure breaking in to steal your TV. No, sometimes it's someone walking right through your front door for a much, much darker reason. Here is our agenda for today's Explainer. We've got 4 distinct, highly unsettling case files to get through. 1. The bizarre house guest. 2. The perfume trap. 3. Whispering Pines. And 4. The blackmail backfire. Then we'll wrap it all up with a look at everyday nightmares. All right, let's jump right into case file 1, the bizarre house guest. Picture this scene. It is a sweltering summer in a tiny Chicago apartment. 2 roommates wake up, walk into their living room, and find a strange, incredibly thin man just sleeping peacefully on their couch. He didn't take cash, he didn't touch their electronics. Actually, each roommate assumed he was a friend of the other, so they literally just left him there and went to work. This intruder, who they hilariously ended up nicknaming Dishy, had this completely bizarre nightly routine. He would break in through the window right around 3 a.m., eat some leftovers from the fridge, like a quesadilla, wash absolutely every single dirty dish in the sink, and then crash on the couch by 4:30. Exhausted from their day jobs, the roommates made the absolutely baffling choice to just let it happen. But guys, this story takes a really dark turn. So the narrator came home early one night, right? And she hears striking and this awful sobbing coming from her roommate, Jessica's room. Suddenly, Dishy emerges, and he's got a swollen blue eye and tears streaming down his face. It turns out Jessica wasn't just being hospitable. She was deliberately letting this deeply vulnerable homeless man stay so she could physically and psychologically abuse him. She confessed that after being bullied by her exes for years, having this guy around and ruling him completely made her feel powerful. It's totally wild to realize the intruder wasn't the monster in this scenario. The roommate was. Well, the narrator just couldn't stand by and watch this happen. While Jessica was out of town, she actually sat down with Dishy, and he confessed something heartbreaking. He told her that Jessica's attention, even though it was violently abusive, felt like the closest thing to love he had ever known. Can you imagine? The narrator looked at him and told him flat out, true connection doesn't leave bruises. She offered him genuine warmth, gave him a safe, quiet place to sleep for the night, and didn't demand pain in return. The very next morning, Dishy was gone, and he never broke in again. Simple, basic kindness literally broke the cycle. Moving right along, that brings us to case file 2, the perfume trap.
For this one, we follow Adam. Adam is a software engineer from Seattle, and his total obsession with a boutique fragrance leads him to tour this incredibly secluded, rural greenhouse. It was run by an eccentric perfumer named Laya. And let me tell you, her methodology was chillingly calculated. It was a 3-step process. Step 1, she'd lure clients in with these highly exclusive scents. Step 2, she was actually lacing these fragrances with potent psychoactive compounds that induced severe drug-like suggestibility. And step 3, once Adam's mind was completely entranced and pliable, she literally scrolled through his phone, found pictures of his loving girlfriend Olivia, and commanded him to go home, completely destroy Olivia's things, and bring back her valuables.
The contrast here is just absolutely terrifying. In his normal, everyday life, Adam shared a cozy little apartment and a super solid 3-year relationship with Olivia. But in this drug-induced trance state, he became an absolute monster. He went back to their place, stole Olivia's grandmother's pearls, piled all of her colorful bras into the bathtub, and literally set them on fire. And when Olivia walked in and caught him, he coldly told her she deserved it and slapped her. He was completely, entirely under Leia's hypnotic control. As you can imagine, the fallout from this is staggering. Adam brought the stolen jewelry back to Leia, who pocketed it and just told him to go home and act normal. But when Adam woke up the next day, the trance finally broke. He had zero memory of what he had done. He rushed home to apologize, only to find Olivia entirely gone and his relationship totally destroyed. And when he frantically tried to track down Laya to figure out what happened, her website was completely dark and the greenhouse was entirely abandoned. She had packed up overnight. She vanished without a trace, just leaving this totally ruined life in her wake.
Okay, let's turn to Case File 3, Whispering Pines Resort.
So 2 women are heading upstate in New York for a music festival, but a severe weather alert ends up canceling the whole thing. Stranded, they decide to seek refuge at an isolated, completely off-season campground called Whispering Pines. They get set up at Site 42, which is right at the edge of the dense, pitch-black woods. They turn off their lantern to go to sleep, and suddenly, out of nowhere, they hear this. Scrape, pause, scrape. It's the slow, incredibly deliberate sound of metal dragging against stone, maybe just 100 yards away. And the worst part? There are no footsteps. Just this terrifying, steady, mechanical rhythm happening out there in the total darkness. Completely terrified, they called the check-in booth. Now, when they first arrived, they had met this really creepy attendant named Ron. Desperately hoping it's just, a neighbor chopping wood or something, they ask Ron if anyone else is around the campsite. And Ron's reply over the phone is absolute nightmare fuel. He says, "Nope, you two are the only ones here." But Ron is sitting half a mile away at the booth, which means whoever or whatever is making that scraping noise just outside their tent is completely unaccounted for. I mean, their reaction is exactly what yours or mine would be in that situation. They don't even bother putting on their shoes. They just sprint straight to their car, lock the doors, slide the seats all the way back, uncap their bear mace, and wait in absolute terror until dawn finally breaks over the lake. Once it's light out, they drive back to the check-in booth, but Ron isn't there. There's a new, younger attendant working. He casually mentions that Ron mysteriously had to leave in the middle of the night for a family emergency. We never actually find out what Ron was doing out there in the dark, but the narrator noted that her blood still runs cold every single time she hears the sound of metal scraping. And that brings us to our final file for today, Case File 4, The Blackmail Backfire. This one starts off innocently enough with a standard Craigslist laptop purchase. The narrator buys it from this friendly-seeming woman named Martina, who tells him she's just selling her ex-husband's stuff during a super messy divorce. Cool, right? Well, that very night, the narrator wakes up to a violent 3 a.m. home invasion. A man dressed all in black is desperately tearing the place apart looking for that exact laptop. The narrator manages to fight him off, but instead of calling the cops right away, he decides to play detective and investigates the laptop himself. He finds a hidden folder that exposes a deeply messy web of mutual infidelity. Security footage actually shows Martina bringing a lover into their home for 2 hours. Then, just 3 hours later, her husband Thomas, who turns out to be the guy who broke in, is caught on camera bringing another woman home. They were both cheating on each other, and this cheap Craigslist laptop held the absolute nuclear evidence. Now, here is where the narrator makes a fatal error. Instead of just deleting the files or, handing it over to the police, greed takes over. He realizes this footage is immensely valuable to these two. So, he successfully extorts $5,000 from Martina to keep quiet. Then, he tracks down Thomas and extorts another $5,000 from him. He walks away with a cool $10,000, totally convinced he had outsmarted both of them. But oh man, here is how the blackmail horrifyingly backfires. 2 weeks later, both Martina and Thomas show up at his doorstep, together. By blackmailing them, the narrator inadvertently gave this fiercely warring couple a common enemy. The extortion literally healed their broken marriage. They called off the divorce entirely and united in this twisted, incredibly violent quest for revenge against him. They burst in, Thomas pins the narrator to the couch, while Martina calmly pulls out zip ties and duct tape. Moving on, pure, unadulterated adrenaline, the narrator manages to shove Thomas off, pushes right past Martina, and sprints out the front door to his car. He drives straight to the local police station and confesses to his entire blackmail scheme just so they will help him. But by the time the police finally reach his house, the couple is completely gone. Poof, no trace of them anywhere. The narrator is now left living in the state of lingering terror, knowing deep down that it's only a matter of time before this untraceable, newly united couple comes back to finish the job. Section 5. Conclusion. Everyday nightmares. When we draw all of these wild stories together, the core takeaway is pretty glaring. The true horror of life rarely looks like a CGI monster in a movie theater. It looks like a quiet roommate exploiting someone vulnerable. It looks like a smiling shop owner using chemistry to ruin lives, a campground attendant with a secret midnight agenda, or a warring couple brought together by her own really poor choices. The darkness, more often than not, is hidden right inside the everyday people around us. So I want to leave you with this final provocative thought to chew on. Are you truly safe in your day-to-day life? Or have you just been lucky so far? I highly recommend you start looking a little differently at the strangers you pass on the street, the places you choose to sleep, and the everyday decisions you make. Because as we've explored in this explainer today, the scariest things out there aren't hiding under your bed. They're walking right through the front door. Thanks so much for joining me today, and hey, stay safe out there.